Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all the parents, players, and coaches, fans of the Spotlight Podcast. This is Coach Anthony Williams, once again, founder and CEO of Connected Athletics. For those that don't know, we are a new startup company based here in Austin, Texas. We are focused on helping student athletes successfully transition from middle school to high school to college, and then either into a career in their professionally in their sport, or into a career where they got to get a job based on their major, hopefully. Myself and Mike, we're going to hear from many others. Somewhere along the way we transitioned. Some of us were blessed and had a successful transition, and some didn't. And so my passion, my soapbox is helping to get these student athletes early. Play your sport as high as long as you can play it, but have a plan for when it's over. And that's something that we are focused on providing services for with Connected Athletics, and the Spotlight Podcast is one of those things. Before I jump in with Mike, my family here, let me real quick thank our sponsors. We've got Buffalo Wild Wings. Appreciate all the Buffalo Wild Wings here in Texas. They are trying to connect more with the community through high school sports and helping student athletes be successful. So shout out to them for helping us out there. Shout out to Go Edit Graphics, a company that's based in Nebraska that does a great job with outbound communication images for both high school and college athletic departments. So if they want to share information about their schedule, player showcase, outbound news from the athletic department, they can use graphics to do that, and to their fans. And then lastly, my friends over in Houston, Epic. Epic stands for Every Play I Compete. They're a new sports apparel company. They got really fire designs for high school uniforms, 7-on-7, AAU basketball, volleyball, gloves, caps. They do it all there. My boy, Stefan Johnson, CEO, and he's hooked us up here on the podcast with some nice gear. So I want to thank them for that. But I want to get to somebody who I met, we're going on probably 20 years ago. Started out as a coach, became a friend, and now I consider him family. Mike Hardge, you probably know the name, very active here in the Austin area. He does radio. He's one of the top selling medical sales guys I know in the country, making a lot of money. He was on the radio show with Chip Brown. He is somebody I can say this comfortably as a man, somebody I love and respect for what he's done, not just in our community, but for my 4 kids alone, both involved in the sport and outside the sport. Mike, how you doing this evening?
I'm doing great. I appreciate that great introduction. Some of that is good. Some of that puts a lot of pressure on the brother, but I too comfortably can say someone that I love and respect, and I'm glad to be a part of the Williams family, because you know what your kids mean to me, and I was glad to be a part of their growth and maturation to become the people that they are today.
So as I mentioned, Mike and I are very actively involved in trying to help student athletes here, not just here in Texas, but all over the place. There's different topics we can talk about, but I know the first thing that's really close to Mike and I is just helping student athletes navigate, take a proactive approach to their recruiting, no matter what sport they're in, whether it's baseball with Perfect Game in AAU, or basketball or football. There is a lot of people involved in this game. The recruiting is getting more exposure, both good and bad, Mike. And so tell me what your thoughts are on how would you advise a student athlete coming up now in any sport on how they should handle themselves and who they should be careful of associating with?
Well, it's funny that you say that, Anthony. And fortunately for you and I, we have had our own kids go through the entire recruiting process, and we were fortunate enough for our kids to get scholarships and go on to play the game. But I believe that it's important for every parent, number one, to take responsibility for themselves. You can blame a coach. You can talk to a coach. You can talk about a coach and say, you didn't help my kid do this. You didn't help my kid do that. But as a parent, aren't we supposed to be more active in those situations? As a parent, don't we need to make sure that we're doing everything? Learn the process first. As a parent, learn it first, so you can talk to your kid about, hey, this is what we need to do. And it starts in the classroom. It don't matter how great your kid is if he's not taking care of business in the classroom, because a lot of these coaches, because we're all pretty much a dime a dozen. No matter how great of an athlete you are, there's another kid that is just as good as you. There's another kid that is good as your son. So the first thing is, if they're the same on the level, what are they going to do? They're going to go look at the transcripts. Which kid can I get into school first and not have to worry about him later academically? So as a parent, make the time for your kids to make sure that their grades are intact. That's the most important. Athletic ability, good kid, that'll take care of itself. Grades are the most important part. And as a former athlete, I can say, back when I was growing up, I wasn't really worried about the grade situation because I thought I was going to be that elite guy. But a wise man told me, and it happened to be my grandfather. He said, if they can find someone like you and don't have to worry about that other side of it, they're going to go for that other kid. So you have to be better in the classroom. And so it changed the way I looked at school. And I hope it changes the way a lot of kids look at school. I have a 12-year-old right now, and all he wants to talk about is his grades, which I'm like, okay, you're on the right path. The foundation is set. Now, do we have to continue to push him? Absolutely. Do we have to continue to work with him? Absolutely. But as a parent and you're trying to figure out what's the best avenue for your kid, start with the books first, and then everything else will take care of it. Secondly, for me, your kid has to be a good kid. I don't have time for headaches. And none of the coaches at the upper level, they don't have time for it. They got too much stuff going on. And again, your kid can be a 5-star, 4-star, 3-star, but if he has a bad attitude, it makes life pretty hard for these coaches. And a lot of these coaches, they got to win now, right? They got to win at the college level. And if you don't handle your business and you're going to be a threat to his program, he's not going to bring you in. So first off, make sure your grades are right. Great. Second off, make sure that you're not a problem child. And parents, make sure that you're not the problem when it comes to it at all. Yeah. Because they don't want the parents that are going to be calling the office every day talking about playing time.
Yeah. Absolutely. Parents I deal with in all the sports, I agree with you. I think the first thing they do is educate themselves in the recruiting process. Right now, there's no saying if you don't know, you'll find yourself gullible to anybody telling you, oh yeah, we've all met guys, oh, I can get your kid to Charleston, I can get your kid to Texas. The only person that's going to help your kid get to wherever is your kid's academics, his work ethic, his character, and his production. Mike, we've talked about it many times, and I'll just jump on that. Is that to me, I tell kids if you have a not stellar GPA, but you're investing more time and money in your 40 or your swing or getting a few more miles an hour on your fastball instead of your academics, then you've got your priorities back with it, and it will come back and haunt you. Parents right now, I tell you, if your son or daughter is good enough, somebody will find them. And when they do, they better have their academics together. They better be coachable. They better be a person of character and integrity, because today the sports world is a business. And as I've been telling people recently, I've been doing research on all this NCAA stuff that's going on with March Madness. NCAA before the pandemic made $19 billion. And you're going to come tell me that you can't, share the wealth amongst student athletes who are not going pro, because we all know only 1% of them are going pro. So there's a lot of things that are starting to come to fruition that we're seeing that parents and student athletes need to prepare themselves for. I would add one more thing to your list: your brand. If student athletes in high school right now are not focused on what kind of brand they're putting out there about themselves from a recruiting standpoint, about what kind of student athlete they're going to be when they get on campus, and who they're going to be as possible endorsement or getting a job at Apple or Google down the road, then you're behind, because it really is where things are at right now. How in your idea, in your world, how important is branding to these young student athletes as it pertains to making that transition to the next part of their life?
Well, it's funny that you said that about the branding thing, because that sound that you hear is my new brand that's coming out. It's on fire right now. So I'm just kidding. But when you talk about the branding, it's so important because there was a kid that I was paying attention to. I believe his name was Evan Stewart right now, that has 1.5 million followers on TikTok. And he's basically making money right now from TikTok from being an endorser. And if your brand is a trouble kid brand or they're doing things wrong, like his stuff is all about football. People are following him. He's a hot name, and the endorsements will come from that. And name, image, and likeness is right there on the horizon. But as a company, if I'm a company and I want someone to endorse my brand, you don't see very many people with bad backgrounds being the endorser, right? You don't see that. So you got to make sure that as your brand continues to grow, there's got to be a lot of positive connected to it. You and I have talked about it, and you've worked for different companies, that the different entities that play a part in helping these kids build their brand or get their name out there in front of these coaches. So you've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly of it all. And for me, I always try to look at, okay, what is this kid's background? What can I use this kid? And when I say use, I mean to help endorse something for me and for himself. Because at the end of the day, we both got to win, right? That's what every coach is always saying. I got to win. You got to win. If we win, it's a great look.
Yeah.
Now, we all know every coach is going to tell you, hey, look, I want you to come here. I want you to get a good education, because to your point that you brought up earlier, you have to have life after football. I love every time you post on your Twitter about the percentages of the kids that get a chance to go to the next level, get a chance to do different things. I love it when you post that because it's eye-opening. It is very eye-opening. And the data, and you're an analytics guy, you've worked in data for a long time, so you know how to find the information. I think it's vital for these kids to understand the importance of that grade, that importance of that balance of how do I build my brand? What guys can I know to help me after my athletic career, regardless of what it is? You and I, both former athletes, done a lot in the game, but we had to get a job afterwards. We weren't sitting pretty. We were sitting pretty. We were comfortable. But even people that make a lot of money throughout that time, they're finding ways to continue to make that money because we have a certain lifestyle. We have families. We have kids that we're trying to raise. And that money has to be in the right spots too. So I think what you do, the education part, and I'm sure there's other guys out there like you, but I care for you and I care what you do. So when you can educate these kids and give them the knowledge, because what you said at the very beginning of this little part that you brought up, the information is out there for you. If you don't take the time to do the research, you're already behind the 8 ball. If you, as a parent, if you do not take the time to find the information, you cannot blame anybody else for not getting your kids out there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You know, Mike, you and I come across a lot of parents who are always talking about, yo, Mike, Anthony, these recruiters, these coaches, they're sleeping on my kid. You know, what can I do to get my kid out there? Who I need to talk to, what I got to do? And, you know, I always tell parents, have your son, you know, Mike, you and I talked about this. You put players in 3 buckets when it comes to recruiting. Those that love their sport, whether it's baseball, football, basketball, whatever it is, those that love what their sport can do for them, and those that just love either the money or the attention. And I tell parents, until your son figures that out, be careful where you invest your time or your resource, because as you play at the upper levels, you have to love the game. You got to love football. You got to love basketball. You got to love baseball, which I've learned from you and Ron through my son's experience. It's a failure sport. So batting 300 is actually a great thing, whereas in every other sport, you'd get cut. Talk a little bit about, you know, to the parents out there who would say, yeah, well, Mike and Anthony have a lot of experience. You know, my son's pretty good over at Vista Ridge. he's kind of flying below the radar. What can I do as a parent to help get my kid more recruiting exposure?
Well, one of the things that you need to do is continue to reach out to these coaches. I mean, find out who's in charge of their film. Find out who's in charge of admissions, because half the time is getting into school. Like, if you can get into school, you can get on the squad and you can let the coaches know, hey, I got a 3.5 GPA or a 4.0 or 2.7, whatever your GPA is that is going to get you into that particular school. Get that over there. Secondly, reach out to the director of the recruiting and say, hey, my son is, or not even my son, have your son send the video over and keep a trail of it. I just reached out to Coach Johnson at such and such university, and I let him know this is where I'm at, this is what's going on. And I send him my huddle, my videos, and my transcripts. Because I'm telling you, a lot of these schools now are looking for academic kids.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them are looking for those kids that are like, okay, I need a kid on my team that can get my GPA up. If you're not at the top of the recruiting chain, so to speak, I need some kids on my team that can get my GPA up, and then you can get in there and go get it. Show up. It's difficult path, but it's more, I guess it would say, you will have more results and more fruit from that labor that you put in because you weren't that kid. You're going to be the one to come in and turn some heads and be like, how did we miss on this kid? Or how did we look at that? And you got to go to those showcases. That's the other thing. Don't go to a showcase that's saying, I'm guaranteeing you a scholarship. Go to the showcase that's telling you, I'm going to make sure that coaches see you and you handle the rest.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. You know, you and I were just talking about also when it comes to recruiting for these student athletes about their non-high school activity, whether it's AAU basketball or baseball or 7-on-7. You know, I think there's a lot of guys out there that do it the right way. I'm going to shout them out there. But there are a lot of people, there seems to be a negative connotation with AAU football and basketball, and I know baseball. Give us some of your thoughts as you've been through it as a player, you've been through it as a father with your son who played basketball at Tarleton. How would you advise parents to handle themselves at these tournaments so it doesn't hurt their son or daughter's recruiting? And how do they how do they know it's the right AAU club, baseball, basketball, football, whatever sport to be involved with? Because it is a combination of what you do during your sport in high school, but you also want to see how you do against better competition, which is what club is all about. What are your thoughts on that, Mike?
Well, you and I have talked about this before, and we've talked about it as parents. We've talked about it as friends. And I've also talked to you as me coaching. No college recruiter ever cares about how many trophies you won on your little league team, your AAU team, or your 7-on-7 team. Yeah, there's a lot of hype because there's a lot of recruiters, and I'm not, when I say recruiters, I'm talking about recruiting websites. And I'm not dissing them because there is a lot of valid information. But you and I can go watch a kid together, Anthony, and you see something on this kid that I may not have noticed, but then I see something on the kid that you're like, dang, I didn't notice that either. So we're going to always have variance of opinion. So the metrics and the 5-4-3 star moniker that you get is always going to be different. But when you talk about being on the right select teams or AAU or whatever it may be, as a parent, I don't want you going to a team that's chasing trophies. Do we all love to win? Absolutely. What is the process, though? What is the fundamental part of it? What are they working on? And then the other part is, what are the parents like on the team?
Yeah. Yep.
Because I don't ever want to be a part of a team where every week I'm trying to figure out if I got to fight with another team because one of the parents on my team is about to squab. Like, even when I was coaching, I used to always go back and forth. And then I had to stop myself and say, the coaches are looking at my son, and I'm a coach, and I'm fighting with another coach over something. Look, I'm too old to go through this anymore. I have younger kids, and I always try to teach them is I'm not coming out the stands for you to be out there acting crazy. And I'm damn sure not going to be on a team with a bunch of people that every week it's like we got to come to the park strapped. Not doing that no more. You can't do that because coaches see it.
Yeah.
Because not only that, you were a parent of a player that went to the University of Texas. You've had all your kids go to different colleges to be around different people. And Anthony Williams and Val Williams cannot be up in the stands going crazy because something happened. It's a bad look. It's a bad look for the program. It's a bad look for the family. And it's a bad look for your kid at the end of the day, because if I'm recruiting the kid, no matter how talented, again, there's somebody just as talented as you with less baggage.
Yeah. No, absolutely. You know, one thing, Mike, you and I've talked about before is, you know, I'm a big believer in this, is I tell parents all the time, just because your son is the best player at his school, maybe in his sport, maybe he is all district, maybe he's all county, possibly maybe all state. Those are not things I think parents think because of that, my son deserves to be recruited or he's an automatic to get a scholarship offer. And I'll say it, and I want you to hear your words on it too. Parents, that is the most incorrect thing there is in recruiting. As a former college coach myself, I think besides the academics, when we start looking at the evaluation, I can't offer your son or daughter until I can check a box that says, can they do that against the other same high level? If you're dominating lesser competition, that doesn't help me win in the Big 12 or in Conference USA or the Pac-12 and especially the SEC. So that is one of the reasons for the whole club AAU environment is you should be focusing on not the theatrics that go on up in the stands, not all the theatrics of me doing a backflip when I score a touchdown. I'm playing against a 5-star cornerback or a 5-star pitcher or a 5-star point guard. I need to show that I can compete at this level so college coach can go, yeah, hey, now that guy can help me win some games at Tulane, Rice, fill in the blank. Talk about the how parents and players can utilize their AAU or club experience the right way by showing, hey, yeah, you can play at a high level. And now that I've seen that, it only enhances your recruiting.
Here's the best way I can describe that. And I have to use myself with this because this was a part of humility for me. I was drafted out of high school, second round. I was a high school, all of this. I was a high school, all of that. And then I thought, oh, I'm a second rounder. I'm one of the best ever. My very first year in professional baseball was the most humbling time in my life because of what we talked about. And that's why I can honestly say there's another kid like you and there's a kid better than what you think you are. So the work ethic is most important in those situations because, and you've heard the stories and you and I have passed these words on to our own kids. While you're sleeping, someone else is working out because they want your spot. And I think your point of you're a 5-star wide receiver and you're going up against a 5-star corner. That's when the rubber meets the road. That's where iron sharpens iron. Yep. And you were fortunate enough to watch Aaron, your oldest son, do that every single day of his life, not only growing up, but then at the University of Texas and then in the NFL. It's the truth. Humility, humbleness, not giving everybody the credit, but knowing, okay, if I see that I'm playing, check this box, like you said, check the box. There's a 5-star going up against me. I'm about to show him who's the better one. I'm gonna attack this like this is my last day. And even if he's not, and he's a 3-star or no star, I'm gonna destroy him because I'm not playing down to the level of someone else. And that's to your point of how hard are you working? How much time are you putting in? Are you just happy with where you are? Or do you see yourself going? Because the next level is just that. It's the next level. It's like a video game.
Yeah.
You can't get to the end of the video game and consider yourself a champion because you made it to stage 3. There's
Right.
stage 4, there's stage 5, there's stage 6. The game don't end, man. And everybody else is trying to get to where you're going. So humility is most important.
Yeah.
Because you know as well as I do, you can talk a lot, but when somebody busts you across your mouth, it changes the way you think about things.
Absolutely. Everybody got a plan till they get hit in the mouth. Mike, let's switch it up here in these last few minutes here and talk about how what we love that you know, I always tell kids, your output now is your sport, but you are talented. Things that make you a great athlete will make you the next great lawyer, sales guy, marketing, teacher, lawyer, doctor. If you understand that your skill set as an athlete is highly desirable by HR managers and directors all over the world in different companies, different markets. I tell these kids now, anybody that tells you that you can only throw a baseball, hit a baseball, knock down a 3, or play football, you need to tell them, nah, this is what I'm doing now as my output. When that's over, oh, I got plans to do even bigger things. Talk about your response to these student athletes who think, well, I am is a fill in the blank player, baseball player, football player, volleyball player, basketball, and how they need to rethink how they think about life because the sport will come to an end.
Yeah, and I appreciate you pointing that out, because as an athlete, we always think it'll never end, and the ultimate goal is obviously whatever your sport is to make it to that major level. But the reality is that's the goal and of everyone, of everybody that's lacing up their shoes to play a football game or basketball game or even baseball, track, whatever sport is yours, softball. The reality of it is everyone is not going to be able to make that. But the competitive edge, the competitive nature, that's what makes people great sales. That's what makes people great team leaders. That's what makes people want to hire athletes when it comes down to it. Because, yeah, you're going to have some people that are like, I don't like athletes, blah, blah, blah. You were a bully or whatever. They think that you're a certain type of person. But at the end of the day, you want an athlete on your team, and not necessarily the best athlete. You don't want the guy that was the superstar and everybody loved him from day one and everything was kind of handed to them and, you know, things like that. But you want those kids that were grinders, because they're going to go out and compete hard for you. So we've seen the NCAA commercial where everybody talks about you're going to go pro in something other than sports, and that's true. But we've also seen the new commercials where you see a person that was a shortstop on her women's softball team, but now she's the top doctor at this hospital because she was competitive. She was a good athlete, but she was competitive, and now she's the top-ranked doctor. And to your point of the lawyer, he might have been the star basketball player at some small college. You don't even have to be the big college. It could be a D3. And he was the star D2 at the star player. But the fact that he was so competitive that he always wanted to have those good grades. He always wanted to be that guy that was head of the class and doing that. So as an employer, I look at resumes and I see who athletes are, because you can tell if someone's going to come in and want to work, or you're going to see somebody that doesn't want to work. And my words to everyone is believe what that NCAA commercial says, that you're not going to go pro in every sport, but you can go pro in life. And that's where guys like yourself, Anthony, that's where you have excelled. That's why you have continued it, because your mindset, you're a competitor. I'm a competitor, and I'm looking for other people that want to compete. And that's why we handle them in the job force. And I know in the profession that I am, which is healthcare now, I see people throughout the day, and I was like, oh, that guy played football at Texas, or that dude was a baseball player at North Texas. And you see all these different, and the only reason why I say Texas is because that's where I was at. I'm in Texas. Yeah, so right. For those that are watching this, you can be from California or whatever. The reality of it all is you can go pro and be just as successful as your major league, minor league, NFL counterparts, and still have that competitive juices like you won a championship. So continue to fight and continue to understand that the ball will get taken away from you at some point, and be prepared for that, because it does not feel good, but there's other things for you to do that you can still compete in. You can still get that juices going.
Absolutely. Hey, as we finish up here, Mike, lastly, I want to talk about something we've all been watching here with the NCAA, and just throughout this whole social injustice awareness culture that we're in right now. You're starting to see, and I love it, because I've never really been a big fan of the NCAA and their excuses of why they're not doing more for student athletes, and specifically those of color. But you saw the basketball players in NCAA saying, hey, the NCAA doesn't own us. Give us our ability to take advantage of our, name, image, likeness. You're starting to see professional athletes understand their power, and not just controlling where they're traded, but just understand that they have a platform that could help further the message of social injustice or other important issues. Tell me about your thoughts. You talk a lot of pro athletes with your radio show, your podcast. What are these young kids, these young student athletes can do to help understand that their power, even as a student athlete or amateur athlete, in making a difference outside their sport?
Yeah, that's a great question, Anthony. And the one thing I will say is kind of goes back to what we talked about with the parents, the educational piece of it now. You just can't tell kids shut up and dribble anymore. Yep. You can't tell kids, well, you're getting a free scholarship. There's nothing free about the scholarship that I earned.
That's right.
I think that's a lazy argument for the fact that you didn't sacrifice the same things I've sacrificed. You didn't put the time in that I did to make sure that what we've been talking about the right time, making sure I stayed out of trouble, making sure I spent that extra time, making sure my grades are intact, and earning the right to play football at whatever school, basketball, whatever, any sport I wanted to, by earning that. And then the fact that my peer, who probably was on a, let's say, piano scholarship or what is it, opera, orchestra, band, whatever, can go and earn money anytime they want, but I cannot. I mean, right. That's not fair to me. It's very, very rare that I would have the time to go and get a job and do certain things, but you can't tell me I can't do it if I can find a way to make the time. So I think the educational piece of kids learning, hey, what is my value to this university? What am I bringing? And I'll use Aaron, your oldest son, who, he was the first Williams that I got a chance to work with. Wasn't the last, but he was my first. But I look at, who's to say that the number 4 jersey that these people are wearing or buying isn't his? They don't have a name on the back of it, but they got the number on the back of it and the front of it. And to me, if I see a number 4, I'm thinking Aaron Williams. I'm not thinking Roy Williams or Kenny Vaccaro. Why can't Aaron get a name, image, and likeness deal from that? There's the processes, and you said it earlier, where the universities, the NCAA is making like $19 million, with a B, $billion throughout this. And you going to tell the kids they can't have any of the money? They can't go and do an autograph signing? Who was it that Terrell Pryor sold his game-worn pants and got in trouble, got some free tattoos.
Yeah.
And my man got in trouble for that.
Yep.
Like, what? But you just sold my jersey for $75 a pop in the co-op, and I can't get any of that?
Right.
I think the NCAA, I think the kids that have been fighting for this, did the right thing to fight for this.
Yeah.
I don't know how you legislate it, because how do you put a regulation on how much money a person can make on it, though, right? That's going to be the biggest part of it, because and I can even use Sam Ellinger at this point. Sam Ellinger probably could have made $1 million at the University of Texas because of everything that happened with, like you said, the social injustice stuff, and people wanted to spend money because they stood with Sam and all that stuff. But what about Caden Stearns in the number 7 and, you know, Tavondre Sweat and all those? How do you regulate who can make what? And that's going to be the biggest issue that I think the NCAA is going to have.
Yeah. No, man. Well, I appreciate time as we finish up here. I know we all miss, I speak for many, we miss you and Chip on the morning radio show, but to finish out, take us out, what you're kind of doing next. I hear some good things about a podcast. I see you endorsing caps and everything else. What is Mike like? How is Mike Hardge living his best life right now? What do you got going on? Share
I appreciate that. I am living my best life, man. I've been all over the place. I did some baseball, not preseason baseball, but some games for Flow Baseball. Peak Events invited me out 2 years ago, and now they're like, we want you every year. So I did the Frisco Classic, the Round Rock Classic. I'm getting ready to call games for Georgetown High School. I've been on ESPN Plus. I'm doing stuff with Tarleton State University. And thank you for mentioning my podcast. I'm doing my podcast. It's called The Hardge Knocks Life. Wherever you get your podcast, you can find it there. I'm doing stories from inside the man cave with Sean Clinch, Mike Murphy, and my man Mo. And then last but not least, I am trying my best to become more involved in the youth programs again, man. I'm reaching back out and touching people because my son, my 12-year-old, is starting to make some moves, and I need to be more involved in that. But I don't want to let everybody else have them, so I'm trying to keep them as close as I can, brother.
I gotta share.
But I appreciate it as always, man.
People are gonna go crazy. So my wife, you know, we got to Texas, and Mike was our first, you know, Aaron's first coach, and he really taught Aaron the game. But we always joked about Mike. I mean, there are a couple quick stories. One, we had a certain pitcher, I won't mention his name, who was struggling, couldn't throw a strike, must have had five, 6 walks in a row. And he kept looking at Mike on the bucket, waiting for him to come get him. And Mike never walks out, didn't call timeout, just yelled, "Figure it out." I'll never forget that. And then the other thing about Coach Mike, for those parents that end up on his team, if you've got questions, you are not going to ask those questions after the game, because as soon as the game is over, the equipment's in the car and Mike is gone. Parents would come up to us like, "Anthony Val, have you seen Coach Mike? I have a few questions about why my son wasn't playing in this spot." I said, "Man, Mike is gone." For that practice. Fond memories of watching the coaching team.
I was trying to avoid the confrontation, dog.
Mike, man, I appreciate your time, man. I'd love to be on your podcast. You know, you can reach out to me anytime. We're going to be hooking up and trying to continue to have an impact on student athletes and here in Central Texas and all over, man. But I appreciate your time tonight. Get home safe, and let's connect here pretty soon.
I appreciate you as always. You know that anything you need from me, I'm here for you. And I know the same is the other way. So I appreciate you, brother.
All right, man. Have a great night.
All right, you too.